everything is free now. That's what they say. Everything I've ever done, gonna give it away. Someone hit the big score. They figured it out. We're gonna do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. I could get a tip jar and gas up the car. Try to make a little change down at the bar. Or I could get a straight job. I've done it before. I never minded working hard. It's who I'm working for. 'Cause everything is free now. That's what they say. Everything I've ever done, gonna give it away. Someone hit the big score. They figured it out. They're gonna do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Every day I wake up humming a song, but I don't need to run around. I just stay at home and sing a little love song. My lover, myself. If there's something that you want to hear, you can sing it yourself. 'Cause everything is free now. That's what I said. No one has to listen to the words in my head. Someone hit the big score. I figured it out. Was gonna do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Was gonna do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Alrighty, well, good evening, folks. Cheers, everybody. A beautiful Friday night. Play a couple more songs here for y'all. train runs so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know what route I've gone. Yeah, when I'm dead and in my grave, no more good times here I crave. Place the stones in my head and feet, till them all I've gone to sleep. Freight train, run so fast. Freight train, run so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know what route I've gone. Yeah, when I die, just bury me deep, way down on old Chestnut Street, so I can hear old number 9 as she comes rolling by. Freight train, run so fast. Freight train, run so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know what route I've gone. Please don't tell what train I'm on. Oh, they won't know what route I've gone. Alrighty. I suppose I've got a little longer song here. I'm going to do one more for y'all. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday night. Such a gorgeous day out there. All right. Well, cheers, everybody. I got one more here for you. In the deep dark hills, eastern Kentucky, that's the place where I trace my bloodline. And it's there I read on the hillside gravestone, it shall never leave Harlan alive. Well, my granddad's dad walked down Catherine always holler. Oh, they never left Harlan alive. Well, the sun comes up about 10 in the morning, and the sun goes down about 3 in the day. Fill your cup with whatever beer or brew you're drinking, and you spend your life just thinking how to get away. Well, no one ever thought there was coal in these mountains till a man from the northeast arrived, waving $100 bills. He asked to buy up the minerals. Oh, he never left Harlan alive. Where the sun comes up about 10 in the morning, and the sun goes down about 3 in the day. Fill your cup with whatever bitter brew you're drinking, and you spend your life just thinking how to get away. Well, Granny sold out cheap, moved west of Pineville to a place where the Richland River winds. I bet they danced them a jig, sang a new song that says never leave Harlan alive. Where the sun comes up about 10 in the morning, and the sun goes down about 3 in the day. Fill your cup with whatever bitter brew you're drinking, and you spend your life just thinking how to get away. Where the sun comes up about 10 in the morning, and the sun goes down about 3 in the day. Fill your cup with whatever bitter brew you're drinking, and you spend your life just thinking how to get away. Oh, in the deep dark hills, eastern Kentucky, That's a place where I trace my bloodline. And it's there I read on a hillside gravestone that you'll never leave Harlan alive. Well, thank you all so much. I think that's it for me.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you. That was awesome, man. I really love Tyler Gregory's music, and I really appreciate you being here, sir. That was great. He has. My name is Richard Renner, by the way, and I know Tyler from performing on the streets and such. I am the producer of the Busker Festival, so I'm familiar with the street performers like Tyler, but he's gone on to do much greater things than he could ever do on the streets. So welcome, everybody. Welcome. This is a good group. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us tonight. Storytelling. You're going to hear some great stories tonight. Storytelling is the basis of all performing arts. It's also the basis of a lot of news stories and things like that. We are going to gather around our virtual campfires, and we are going to celebrate ourselves and our culture. And most of all, we're going to celebrate dirt. That's right. We're going to have some dirty stories tonight. I know why you came here now. Yeah, dirty stories. Yeah, my wife told me to talk dirty to her, so I said kitchen. So I know you're laughing. I can see it. It's all right. I'm used to this mute stuff. So okay. So before we get started, I do want to thank the Art Center, and especially for just supporting the arts and supporting the Story Slam, and for David in particular, David Holland, for just being the mentor and the mainstay throughout all this and helping to create this. The LAC, if you go to the LAC website, they have a lot of other great events and workshops and things like that. They are thriving during this pandemic. They were trying very hard, and they're reaching out and making great things happen. So we have a list of regular storytellers who's going to be here tonight, but there's always room for more. There's always room for more. So if at any time that you feel prompted to tell a story, it's perhaps someone has moved you so, and you've thought of something, then put that in the chat box over on the side, and we'll get you selected, and perhaps you'll be able to tell it tonight. This is a free event. You probably figured that out by now because nobody asked you to pay anything. It is pay what you can. There's a link that Jessica is going to put in the chat that will let you drop some money in our hat. And in particular, if you can give $100, we'll give you a shout out. That's right. And some of the shout outs that we want to give tonight go to Jim and Sharon Hammond, Jody Johnson, John Candy, the Lawrence Busker Festival, yes, Ann and David Holland, Valerie and Francisco Bido, I hope I'm saying that right, David Ritter, Margie Wakefield Law Office, and Alexander Buck. So we want to thank you folks for putting in over $100. So there are going to be 7 storytellers, one of which is going to be moi. And so let's just get started with the first storyteller. That would be me. That would be me. Now the theme around is dirt. And I was thinking about my relationship with dirt. And I think my relationship with dirt changed when 21 years ago, I woke up in the ER on Easter Sunday morning. How did I get there? Well, originally, I had grown up on a farm. I'd grown up on a farm in northwest Kansas. And my relationship with dirt was established at that time. It was hot and dry. I can still smell hot, dry dirt growing out on that farm. The earth meant income. It meant sustenance. It meant a way of life, a whole culture to us. I loved it. It meant my family too. And the best memory I had was standing in the shower and washing all that dirt and watching it go down the drain. It was a beautiful feeling and a beautiful thought. So eventually I moved off the farm with my mom when she got a teaching job in Wichita. And we moved into a small town, and we moved right into next door to a park in Riggs Park next to Cowskin Creek. Sounds typical, doesn't it, for Kansas? It was a great place for a little boy to grow up. I didn't go to the playground. I didn't go to the pool. I went to the park and I went to the creek. We actually had a rope swing that went over the creek, and you could swing into the water from there. And all the trails that were in that park, we built ourselves just by walking through them. And there were crawdads to catch along the river. And the first thing I did was I took it out to the park and I rode it in the woods before I even rode it on the street. I think I invented mountain biking, but that's lost to history right now. I gradually grew away from the land. I went on to college here at good old KU. Then I got married. I moved to the suburbs and started working for a living and owning a home and paying bills and doing all those kind of suburban kind of things. I was riding a bike still though. And about 1993, I started to hear about mountain biking. And that sounded very familiar to me. And it brought back all those great memories of riding a bike through the woods and jumping off of things and all that stuff. So I bought my first mountain bike in 1993. And from there, I rediscovered the earth. I rediscovered parks and trails and friends and people who are out there doing it too. Every time out on the trail became a small adventure. It was a wonderful time. There was plenty of obstacles to go over and things to learn, and I was getting better and better. It was very satisfying to conquer features like rock ledges and fallen trees and long uphills and fast downhills and such like that. And it was around April 1999, after mountain biking for several years, I was with my friend Bruce, and I were out at a park called Landau Park near Blue Springs, Missouri. And we were riding out what were formerly motocross trails, and they were pretty rough. The Earth Riders, the mountain bike club, gone out there and made some new trails and some new features, and we were trying them out. And we were challenging each other. And we would stop and actually go over each feature several times. It was a downhill, it was a rock ledge, it was a tree, until we got it done. My confidence increased 100% that day. I thought I could accomplish anything. So the next day, I went out there again myself, and there was a new feature called the Death Drop. Death Drop. It was named that for a reason, I found out. And I thought, I can do this. I can do the Death Drop. I rode through the woods. It must have been about 7 miles to get to the Death Drop. I got up to the top of what was a very rocky downhill ledge, and it went straight down. It went to the ledge and went straight down. With my newfound confidence, I said, I can do this. I absolutely can. I went up to the ledge. I went up to the ledge a couple times, went up to the ledge. Finally, I decided to say, that's it. I'm going to do this. I went up, I jumped off. I made it to the bottom, but not in the way I planned. The front wheel of my bike went down. I went over the handlebars, flying through the air like Superman. In fact, that's what they call it. They call it a Superman. I landed on both hands about 5 feet down. I did a flip over onto my back. I looked up, and there was my bike coming down and landing on top of me. Now, that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I had landed on both hands. And I knew from previous experience that I'd broken both my arms. I'd broken both my arms. I could not lift any weight with them. This was a brand new bike that I had, by the way. It was a brand new full suspension bike. I thought I could do anything on it. It didn't mean anything to me at that moment. I kicked it into the woods. I started to walk the 5 to 7 miles out of the woods. There was nobody there for me to contact, nobody. I ran into one rider on the way, and I just kind of looked at him, and I said, "Do you have a cell phone?" He said, "No." And I said, "See you later." There's no reason to go through the whole story or anything like that, because if he didn't have a cell phone, he couldn't help me. I walked out. There was a firing range that I walked into. Yeah, get your hands up. That's not what happened. But anyway, they were able to help me. There was a guy there who was a dentist, believe it or not, and he had some help. He had some medical training, and he said, "Stand back, everybody. I'm a dentist. I can help this guy." They called me an ambulance, and I spent that night in the ER. It was one of the worst nights I've ever spent in my life. Very painful, man. I had a constant drip of Demerol, which I was very grateful for. So, to make a long story short, what do you do when you have 2 broken arms? Well, to begin with, did I mention that I was making a living as a juggler? No, I didn't mention that. Okay. Well, I was making a living as a juggler, and 2 broken arms more or less means that you're not making a living right then. So I had to cancel all my gigs. And one thing you don't do when you have 2 broken arms is that you really can't take care of yourself. You can't dress yourself. It's hard to cook. And there's a lot of things in the bathroom that you can't do either. So I had to admit to myself that I had to go live with my mom. You know, breaking your arms is painful enough. Try going back and living with your mom again. Yeah. So first day there with my mom. She's being a good mom. She's doing everything for me. And we come to the bathroom routine. And yeah, that kind of thing hadn't happened since I was 2 years old. Let's just put it that way. And I was bound to determine that that wasn't going to happen again. So I figured out how to take care of myself. And I invented 5 new yoga positions at the same time. So I was able to live with my mom for the next 5 weeks. I got better. Miraculously, 5 weeks was pretty good. I got better, and I learned the thing I learned about dirt, and particularly mountain biking, is that necessity is a mother. And now, before each ride, I now say the words, mother, to remind me that if I take a risk and I don't make it, I may end up living with my mother again. And we're not talking about Mother Earth either. So that's my story. That's my story. Thank you very much for the virtual clap. Yes. Make sure you donate and tip your waitresses, please. Thank you. Okay. Well, the next guy, our next storyteller is Joe Hollowell. Tonight is Joe's first time at our Story Slam. He is a semi-retired IT nerd, and he doesn't want you to call him a geek. I understand that. And after almost 45 years in this industry, he is working on his 5th startup company. You know, someday you're going to retire, Joe. And yes, it says his retirement plan is death, so don't do it anytime soon. Okay. I met Joe in the Toastmasters Club, and I must say that he has gained in confidence, and he has come a long way. And this, I feel like, is your public debut, Joe, so I'm more than happy to be here. So this is Joe's story called How a Superhero Changed My Life.
Oh, thank you, Rich. Again, my name is Joe Hollowell, and yeah, my retirement plan is that someday I'll be working, the next day I'll be retired. And I'm here to tell you a story, not so much about dirt, but about superheroes and superpowers. We've all thought about superpowers at some, I'm sure. And this one goes back to when I was 5 years old. I remember it like it was this morning. And my superpower that I had always been wanting to have was super strength. Part of that was that I came from a large family, sisters and two older brothers. My oldest brother, half brother, is 10 years older than me. When I was 5 years old, I remember about my oldest brother was that he was pretty merciless to me. He would tease me, toss around like a rag doll, and nothing I could do, right? 5 years against 15 years. Well, I loved to watch cartoons. We would watch Superman, Mighty Mouse, but my favorite, still my favorite, was Popeye, Popeye the Sailor Man. I mean, he was a regular guy. He would make mistakes. He would tell jokes. He was always had some kind of foible that he exhibit. And of course, I could identify with him as he would get all times just mercilessly did by Bluto. Would beat him up, toss him around, and fight for Olive Oil's attention. Well, always without fail, Popeye would grab down a spinach, eat some spinach, and turn the tables on Bluto and just kick him around and toss him like a rag doll. Well, in a wistful daydream moment, I walked into the kitchen and said, Mama, I just really wish such thing as spinach. And she goes, of course there is. Wait a minute now. Don't be punning me. She goes, yeah, like same kind of spinach Popeye eats. And she goes, well, yeah. And I went, wait a minute. How can you possibly get spinach? It must be some kind of special privilege or some kind of miraculous method you could get spinach. She goes, oh no, you get it down the corner grocery store. And about this time, I'm thinking, wait, my life's about to change here. I'm about to turn the tables on my bullying brother to get my hands on some spinach. I said, well, Mom, how can we get some of that? I'll tell you what, I'll have Tucker, your brother, down to that store and grab a can or two of spinach for his life. And I'm trying to maintain my excitement. I ruined this. I really knew that if I too excited and blurted out my intention was, that I was going to lose the opportunity to have spinach. So, calmly, well, Mom, that'd be good. I'd appreciate that. I'd appreciate spinach. She goes, all right, Tucker, get here. I'll take your brother down to the corner store. We need up a couple of cans of spinach, maybe a little bread, a couple of things that she sent there. Well, I'm 5 years old. I don't really understand or appreciate irony, but I remembered the feeling of how delicious this was going to be. The brother was going to walk me down, get that spinach that I was going to use to just, try a hamburger. Well, we're walking down. It's a 2-block walk, a little mom and pop grocery store. And I'm just, maintaining a poker face, going, I possibly let him know what happened here. I can't show him excitement that we're going to get spinach and that'll be the end of you. So I'm just kind of, poker face. Oh, yeah, gosh, here we go. I'm just doing an errand, just a grocery errand, nothing special here. Don't be thinking there's anything going on. To the grocery store, grab a can of spinach, walk back home. I'm just about to explode with excitement. This is a miracle. I am going to taste my first experience of super strength as a Popeye wannabe. We get back home. My brother dropped the bag of groceries and the cans of spinach at the kitchen counter, takes back off to his room or tea or whatever. He wasn't any of it. I said, Mom, can you open this can of spinach? Don't you want to wait till? No. I gotta have this now. You gotta get it for me. Okay. She opened the can of spinach. I said to me, well, don't you want me to eat it up? Don't you want me to something with? I mean, we're talking canned spinach, right? Even though it's to do for dirt, it sure is like all dirt in that can. Well, she said, oh, okay. So I said, just give me maybe a fork. Give me a fork. All right, here's a can of spinach opened and a fork. I took a big old fork full, put it in my mouth, and just spewed it. This is a horrible flavor, whole taste. I managed to choke it down. Okay, this is going to kick in soon. Grabbed another forkful, choked it down. Tasted like dirt. And nothing's happened. I'm going, Mom, when's the spinach kick in? I'm watching Popeye, and instantly I should be seeing some kind of worship in my muscle. And she's going, well, no, spinach is something that you eat throughout your life to build your strong body as you grow. And I'm telling you, like I say, I remember like it was this morning. I could not be more crestfallen, more disappointed, disillusioned in life. That, wait a minute, you mean Papa's lying to me? The coons aren't real? There isn't strength? Well, I'm there just dealing with this nightmare of life is horrible. And guess who I'm kicking? It's my brother, Tucker. And he knew all what my plan was. And he just laughing, just making merciless fun of me. And of course, tossed around like a rag doll. Well, ever since I have never been, swept with any kind of fantasy about superpowers or superheroes. It did bring me to a real recognition, real realization that life isn't fair, but at the same time, life is what you make of it. I don't need any superpowers now. And gosh, the years that have gone by since that moment have continued to teach me that life is what you make. No, I still don't eat spinach. No inches needed. No superpower needed either. And that's my story. Thank you.
Awesome. I love that. I love the childish belief in spinach. Yeah. So Joe, if I drink enough Red Bull and eat enough Cheetos, will I become an IT guy too? Yeah.
Takes a little more than that, but counting on you.
And that's a good start. Okay. Well, on to our next dirty story. Brian Moss is a longtime Story Slam attendee, but a first-time storyteller, not counting the one short story last year that he told. He's a Lawrence High and KU grad, and he moved away for a number of years. And like most good people here in Lawrence, he came back, eventually finding his way back home. He currently works as a librarian at KU, so he hangs around stories all day long. Brian, the floor is yours. Oh, this is his story called April F.
Right. Hi, everyone. I do have to admit right up front that my story doesn't have much to do with dirt. I kept trying to find a way to like tie it into the theme. It is an April story in that it takes place 25 years ago this last week. The one tie-in I could think of is that I was a dirt poor college student when this all takes place. Specifically, I was a graduate student at the University of Bonn in Germany. And as you might recall from the impromptu story I told last year, I was living on about $5 a day after my student fees and my housing fee were paid. But that's $5 a day for food and tobacco and booze and clothes and postage and books and travel, entertainment, everything. So it was good practice to be a librarian now, and in terms of having to live frugally at that age. But I had about a month before this story begins, I'd started dating a young woman named Constanza, or Connie, who's a central figure in this story. And she had just recently graduated from college and was sort of temping and looking for work. And I had spring break coming up. So we said, where can we go? Where can, we're both dirt poor. Where can we afford to go? But we want to go do something. And she suggested going to Prague because it was affordable and touristy enough that it's easy to navigate, but not so touristy that it's, too touristy. And so yeah, sign me up. So we go down, we buy our bus tickets because short of hitchhiking, that's the cheapest way to get there. Buy our bus tickets, we look at the schedule. There's a bus every day. Let's take the one at 7 a.m. on the 1st of April, or the first Saturday in April. So fast forward, it's like 6:30 the first Saturday in April. Neither of us normally get up at this hour. We've had even less sleep because I'm pretty sure the night before was my friend Carlos's birthday, or maybe it was just a Friday. Anyway, a bunch of us stayed up late drinking wine and singing songs and stuff. So Connie and I are both pretty bleary-eyed, and we just want to get onto the bus, and we'll sleep more on the bus on our way. And right before we get downtown, we're on the local bus going down to the main train station, bus station. And right as we get downtown, right before we get there, Connie looks up and she's like, Scheiße, they're checking tickets. And as a student, my student ID is my bus pass. She was playing the odds, kind of like you don't always feed the meter downtown. And we try to get off the bus before they get to us, but too late, she gets caught. So they say, look, we're going to our office right over there to do paperwork anyway. Come with us, you can pay your fine, be on your way. And so she, kind of sheepishly hands me her bag and says, okay, wait for the bus, I'll be out as quick as I can. I'm pretty sure they kept her longer on purpose because they knew we were trying to catch a bus somewhere, just to sort of, mess with her. So I'm standing there waiting, and it's cold, and I'm hungover, and it's, early in the morning, and I'm waiting for the bus, and I'm waiting for Connie, and I'm waiting for the bus, and neither one is coming out. And finally, it's like 7:15, and things run on time in Germany, so there's still no bus, and I'm like, what's going on? And Connie comes out and just, she's like, I'm so sorry. And this might actually be a good time for a timeout in the narrative to tell you something that Brian in the story doesn't know, which is that Connie and I would go on to live together for several years, actually work together too. We've traveled to like a dozen countries on 4 continents, and still to this day, the best travel partner I've ever had, still a good friend. But in that moment, things are getting off to an inauspicious start, I guess. So anyway, she's like, I'm so sorry. I'll go try to figure out how we can like reschedule for tomorrow or whatever. And I said, actually, the bus still isn't here, which confused her too, because, things run on time in Germany. So we stand there, we're smoking a cigarette, trying to figure out what to do. And I think we finally turned around and looked at the schedule that was posted and realized that on the 1st of April, they had changed the schedule, and the bus now leaves at 7 in the evening instead of 7 in the morning. So all this stress was for nothing. We've got 11 more hours to wait. So we walked back to her place, slept all day basically, and come back, get on the bus. Everything's fine. We're headed to Prague. Still no dirt in the story. I'm sorry. Other than that, we're dirt poor. So we're headed towards Prague. Another little side story here is if you remember my story from last October, I had caused myself some unnecessary stress crossing an international border. So I'm sensitive to borders, especially as, you know, someone who's just there on a student visa. And I think we were pulling out of Nuremberg. I think that was the last stop before the border. Would have been about midnight. And the driver gets on the intercom and he says, everyone's an EU citizen, right? Because if you are, they'll just wave us through. And so I'm kind of sitting there hoping someone else is going to raise their hand too. So I'm not, it's midnight, I'm heading into Eastern Europe. You know, I don't want to be the guy to go, I'm an American. So in my very best German, I'm like, I'm here on a student visa. And he says, you're asleep. And so I understood what he meant, which is, so I was wide awake when we crossed the border, pretended to be asleep. But anyway, so we roll into Prague 5 in the morning. Keep in mind, we thought we would be getting there at like 5 in the afternoon to find a place and stuff. So anyway, and I'll leave out the whole story about trying to get to the train station to where the tourist office is at so we can find a place. So we sit down, and the whole time, you know, we've got our bags and stuff, and we sit down and we're just like, okay, let's just collect ourselves. It's starting to snow outside, like the wind's blowing the snow sideways. It is pitch black. The town is completely just, it's like a twilight zone, how empty, you know, we're in this middle of town. So that was all weird. And so we're like, all right, let's smoke a cigarette while we figure out what to do. Because it was the 90s and that's what we all smoked. So we're smoking a cigarette out of nowhere in this empty train station. These 2 guards appear and point to this little sign we'd missed that said we couldn't smoke there. So for the second time in our trip, we're paying a fine now, and we still haven't gotten anywhere yet. And so that helped us decide, let's, rather than wait for the tourist office to open, let's go ahead and see if we can find something on our own. We head out, no luck. The one person in one of the hotels we found actually laughed at us and pointed out that it was Easter Sunday, which we had not realized. We were traveling on a holiday weekend. And so we kept looking around. We actually crossed the river at one point, thinking maybe there's a hotel over there because the Kafka museum's over there and the castle's over there and stuff. And still no luck. A couple expensive hotels, but nothing in our you know, student budget. So we're crossing back over on this other bridge, which I realized a day or 2 later was the Charles Bridge, which if you Google Prague, the first picture that comes up is the Charles Bridge with all these tourists on it, but it is completely empty. It's still pitch black. I think we'd actually just sprung forward the weekend before, but it's pitch black. The snow's hitting us sideways. We're still lugging our bags and stuff. And just the absurdity of it all kind of hits me. And I stop just in the middle of this bridge. I just stop, put my bag down, and Connie goes a couple more steps and, you know, realizes I've stopped, and she looks back. She's like, is everything okay? And it's like, yeah, I suddenly realized that I understand Kafka now. Which, if you know Kafka, makes sense. But so if this was a Kafka story, it would end right there. I'm an American, so I'm going to tack on a happy ending. We get back to the tourist office. We find a place to stay. It continued to be kind of rainy and stuff, but we had a lovely few days. My friend Carlos and his girlfriend came to visit us. Maybe I'll tell an impromptu story about that. That's a whole other thing. And then the day we're supposed to leave, we look at the forecast and the sun is coming out. It's going to be 70 degrees Fahrenheit for several days. And we're like, we got no jobs to go back to. So we extended our trip, hit some off, you know, the beat or off the beaten path kind of places, and had a great rest of our trip. And as I was thinking about all this today, I realized, and I hate to like moralize here, but how much that felt like a parallel to this year that we've all just been through, and just this long slog, and you keep thinking you're about there, and then the goalpost moves on you. But if we can all, I just got my second shot today, so you know, keep your masks on and you know, get your shots, and there is sunshine on the other side of that bridge. We'll get there. So that's my story.
Thank you, Brian. You know, I was going to mention Kafka about your story anyway, but by golly, you did it yourself. That's you know, next time you come on, I want to hear more about the Kafka Museum. You know, I can only imagine what that place must be like. Moving right along. Moving right along. We've got another great storyteller, Emmy Buck. She's been here before, and she credits her grandmother for inspiring her to become a storyteller. Grandmothers are good for that. Emmy works in HR during the day, and at night she enjoys her time with her family, baking and watching old musicals. She dedicates today's story to the staff of the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. So you get to find out why. The title of this story is called Busted at Blockbuster. Take it away, Emmy.
Thank you, Richard. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deed, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Teddy Roosevelt. What I love about that quote is the image of bravery it always inspires. I always actually think of Wesley from The Princess Bride, where he's emerging from the fire swamp and he's surrounded by Prince Humperdinck and his whole army. And despite being covered in blood and having just fought off a rodent of unusual size and being covered in dirt and sweat, he still faces the enemy. Movies to me bring to life these images of bravery and courage. And back in the day, I used to love going to Blockbuster with my family. Blockbuster was that beautiful safe haven where you could wander around the DVDs and VCRs, if you guys remember what those are, and see titles and images of grand displays of courage. I feel that, I do definitely want to call out the last Blockbuster is left in Bend, Oregon. You all have one last chance to see it. Netflix released a documentary about it, and I forgot about the smell that Blockbuster had. You know, that smell is like plastic and popcorn and kind of stale candy. So you have your last chance. This is your warning. If you leave now and in the middle of my story, you can get there in time, but you might miss my story. But back to what I was actually going to talk about was a night that my family and I went to Blockbuster. We typically do a Friday movie night. And on this particular night, we were wanting to celebrate my sister's return from camp. Typically we'd wander around the aisles. Addie would go off in her direction. My brother and I would pair off. My parents would pair off. And the staff at Blockbuster was so great at helping us reconcile all of our different tastes. My sister loves musicals. My parents love, action adventure. My brother and I will, typically go for rom-coms or action adventure. And so it's hard to pick. And they always helped. On this particular night, Addie had been away at camp for about a week, and my sister was born with a brain malformation. She was diagnosed as intellectually disabled, and she's akin to a 3-year-old in an adult body. And during that week at camp, she'd been uncomfortable with not being on her usual schedule. And by usual schedule, I mean the bathroom schedule. In fact, she hadn't gone in a week. And I think returning to the safety of our Blockbuster, she felt comfortable again, and she showed it. At first, there was a slight smell of suspicion, a heightened awareness with Addie's odd silence, and then my mom's shrill cry of, "Oh my God." And everyone in the store jumped. And after that, the evening quickly progressed from horror to comedy to drama in a matter of seconds. It was better than any film we could have watched, to be honest. I pride myself in knowing the role within my family. And I'll tell you, I did not disappoint that night because my brother and I quickly hid in the video game section because we knew that was the one aisle Addie had not wandered into. There were 2 whole aisles decimated. And my mom approached the very young store manager and said, "I'm so sorry, but my daughter has pooped all over your store." And the manager looked down the drama aisle to see small to medium-sized droplets on the bright blue carpet. You know that beautiful Blockbuster smell I was just talking about? That store never smelled that way ever again. The poor kid must have been totally shocked. But he quickly masked that expression and said, "Oh, that's totally fine. Like, every Friday night, someone just takes a dump on the carpet." The store manager must have known his peers were there. Blockbuster hires a bunch of other teenagers. He must have known he was going to be heckled for years for being on all fours, scrubbing in someone else's shit. But he didn't care. He didn't care. He recognized my family we live in a different space, and he wanted to help us in a very dire moment. I always thought Courage looked like Wesley from The Princess Bride, facing off an army of rodents of unusual size. But I realized a courageous person is the one who jumps into the arena and is marred by dust, sweat, blood, and sometimes someone else's shit. And that's the person who dares greatly. Thank you all.
I am speechless. But
We were too.
that amazing. That reminds me of when I worked at a movie theater once, and it was crowded on Thanksgiving weekend, and we're busy doling out popcorn. And I look in front of me, and the woman coming up to order a hot dog starts to throw up. And I look at the guy next to me and says, "I'm going to go check the theater." and I ran off and let them deal with it. Yeah. You should have told the story about the rest of the staff of the Blockbuster too. So, okay, well,
Thank you, guys.
and that is the last Blockbuster that she ever went into. Okay, well, thank you, Emmy. And coming up is a friend of mine from Toastmasters again. And I know her as a great storyteller and a wonderful presenter. This is K.R. Miller. K.R. lives in a secret forest. And if you're lucky, you get to visit that. She often uses stories to dig up the dirt and then gives the raw truth. She sometimes uses a splash of humor with a raw taste of reality, a dash of vinegar, a smidgen of mystery. And that's a cocktail you can drink, boy. And today, everything is sprinkled with dirt, and she shares her first story with Story Slam. You have to be associated with those who live in the forest to get the scoop, and today she's going to be sharing it with you. So, KR, it's all yours.
Thank you, Richard. I was told that it would happen. My dreams warned me that an uninvited stranger would show up, lurking in the shadows. I almost laughed it off, but I knew he was near. I knew the wisdom of my dream would prevail again. I subconsciously kept an eye out. Days passed and nothing happened. Then one day I was preoccupied with my administrative duties. I was trying to recruit more participants for my research, ordering my upcoming graduation gown and cap, completing my physical therapy. I was engaged in a group project of a needs assessment for a hypothetical research project for class. But outside of class, I was conducting a real research project. I was trying to keep up with the latest world news. I had a meeting with the dean. My meetings, emails, and deadlines seemed to never end. I took my work with me to my private quarters. I stepped out just for a moment to ask somebody something, and quickly darted back into my private quarters. There he was with his poisonous weapons and threats. Where did he come from, I wondered? How did he get into my bedroom? Where had he been hiding? I'm not sure what he had in mind, but I knew it was not good. He boldly kept his menacing stance as he stood before me. It was clear he was ready to fight and inflict pain. He was heading straight toward me, wasting no time. Now, I'm usually a peaceful and nonviolent person, but I had to make a quick decision. No, I did not scream like those women in the movies or those on television when they're scared or when they see something that they don't like. I quickly thought of Felicia. On the PBS show, Father Brown Detective, Felicia seemed to scream in almost every detective series. Screaming always seemed silly to me. Lady squeals and scream at the tiniest bugs, mice, or even a dead human body, whatever. Here I had a dangerous stranger in my room. Even if I wanted to scream, there was no time to waste. Somehow I knew he would pay me a visit, as my dreams had kept warning me. Chills ran through my arms and hands. My aim had to be perfect. I gripped my walking cane and lifted it as I aimed directly at him. I could not afford to miss. Quickly, silently, and effectively, I killed him. Right then and there, he was dead and he lay limp on my bedroom floor. His 8-legged body was now stuck to the bottom of my cane. His poisonous tails and pincers were crushed as the poison squirted out. Now, how in the world did a scorpion get into my bedroom? What in the world did you think I killed? Wouldn't you kill a poisonous scorpion if you found one in your bedroom? I did not think I will get any sleep tonight. I know scorpions can climb, as I have seen them on the walls, but I will not be sleeping on my mattress, which sits on the floor. Why can't I dream about butterflies and flowers and owls instead of scorpions, snakes, and screeching vultures? And speaking of which, hang on one moment. Ouch, don't bite me. For some people that believe they don't exist, they do. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
supposed to add, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to add one more line. Sorry, can I add one more line?
Go right ahead.
Sometimes looking for dirt can get you killed. Sometimes looking for dirt can get you killed. Thank you.
Yeah. This is just another show and tell. That's all. Yeah, thank you, KR. That's awesome. A couple things. First of all, if anybody has an impromptu story that they want to tell, then now's the time to do it. I would suggest that you take a look around your room. Take a look around your room, and if you see anything that looks like dirt, something in the corner, maybe a small child, something that's dirty, then that would be a thing to tell a story about. So if you're so moved, please let us know in the chat box, and we'll get you into the Story Slam lineup. Also, I want to remind everybody again about the donations link. Jessica, if you could put that donations link back up in the chat box so it's right up there in front of everybody, that'd be great. And we want to definitely thank some people who've donated tonight. Jack and Carla Levy just donated over $100, so they get to be put on that sponsors list of $100 donations. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so moving on now, we're going to go on to Tim O'Brien. Tim is legit. Tim is a dirt farmer on a homestead north of Lawrence. He lives in an earth-burned home with a living roof. That's right. He loves and appreciates dirt. I don't know if he got here early enough, but you could see him out feeding his chickens too while I was online. He also teaches at Letterpress Printing and the Lawrence Art Center. So that's a great connection to have here. Tim, his wife Jenny has told stories of the Story Slam a couple of times, and now it's his turn. Tim's story is called A Terror Memoir. Take it away, Tim.
Okay, thanks. That word is hard for us Americans to say, a terroir memoir. We're pretty used to the word memoir, but terroir we don't say very often. So this is a terroir memoir, sort of a cosmic reminiscence about dirt. I'm sort of a foodie, and I'm not sure if I was a foodie because I was a gardener or if I'm a gardener because I'm a foodie. Those things are kind of like chickens and eggs, you know what I mean? And when you're a gardener, as well as when you're a foodie, you're partly a scientist because you're interested in analyzing what you're doing and how you grow things. And a big part of being a gardener, of course, is paying attention to the dirt. But this word terroir comes up more in foodie circles, especially in regard to wine, because terroir refers to kind of everything about the natural environment in which the grapes or whatever the food substance is grows. So you're talking about the geological history of the place, as well as the soil profile, the topography, whether it's on a slope or it's down low or up high. The climate, of course, plays a big role in terroir. So all of these things come together to make a flavor profile in a wine or in a cucumber or in a tomato or anything. There was a great quote from, well, I don't know who said it originally, but the Minnesota Soil Conservation Corps put out this little pamphlet, or it was like a bumper sticker that said, "We owe our existence to the 6 inches of topsoil that we have, that we stand on, and the fact that it rains." So our existence really has a lot to do with dirt. And so this word terroir is etymologically related to the word terra, Latin for earth. And so you can see where that comes from. It really has to do with dirt. And so working backwards chronologically in my gardening history, I'm in Jefferson County right now, where I grow fruit trees and an annual garden, and I keep sheep and chickens, a lot of fruit trees, a lot of berry producing plants. But before that, we lived in North Lawrence, which was great soil because on the north side of the Kansas River, it's very silty loam. It's a totally different soil profile than on the south side of the river. And when we were thinking about moving to Lawrence, somebody said, well, if you want to have a garden, you should find a property in North Lawrence. That's where the gardeners are. That's where the best gardens are. So we did that, and it was a great garden there. I remember thinking that the soil was like cake. It was so easy to dig. So before that, we lived in Portland, Oregon, which was okay for gardening as long as you wanted to just grow lettuce and spinach. It was a little rough for growing hot season things like tomatoes and corn and squash and even beans. Before that, we were in Columbia, Missouri. Before that, I was in Germany. And while I was living in Germany for about 3 years, I would travel during the summers and go to Ireland, thanks to a program called WWOOF. I want to put a little plug in for this program called WWOOF, WWOOF. It stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And it's a way that anybody, but it's mostly young people, can stay on farms and learn about farming for free. You know, they help the farmer, and in return for their help, they just get room and board from the farmer. So there's no money that changes hands, but it's kind of a win-win-win situation because it has to do with supporting organic farming. And as a woofer, you learn a lot. Well, so when I was living in Germany, I would go to Ireland as a woofer, and people of Irish or sometimes other Celtic ancestry will refer to those islands as the old sod. And the sod is a great word that's also related to dirt, because sod is the top few inches of dirt that is held together by the tangle of roots of grass. And so sometimes just grass itself is referred to as sod. But yeah, the old sod of Ireland is certainly a beautiful place. There's just so many, there's so much presence in Ireland of previous existences. There are tombs and ruins and castles and evidence of people who have lived in Ireland for a long time. Neolithic forts, Bronze Age tombs, all kinds of things. And so where I lived in the west of Ireland, in County Clare, I lived with a family whose last name was O'Dea, spelled O''D''E''A. And I think in the United States, we usually pronounce that O'Day, but over there they say O'Dea. Anyway, their farm had an Irish name, Coshcame. And Coshcame in Irish Gaelic means footprint. And this is really interesting because, you know, from like, if you looked at their farm from Google Earth now, it looks like a footprint. But that farm got that name hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, before airplanes were even around, or even hot air balloons. And so there were theories about how the shape of their farm was where a giant had stepped onto the landscape and imprinted that shape of his foot. And so this particular farm in Ireland on the old sod even had a very earthy name in itself, Coshcame. This is in the middle of a place called the Burren, which is an interesting place geologically too. A lot of limestone. It's limestone topography, which is also referred to as karst topography, because it's honeycombed with spaces where water flows in and out. There are these sort of magical lakes that appear and disappear, and there are caves, and the soil is very rich in lime, or it's sort of closer to the alkaline side of the pH scale. And just very fruitful, great grass there and herbs all over the place. It's kind of semi-mountainous, but this farm for Irish standards was fairly large. I think it was about 300 acres. And before I had been there, 4 of the family's sisters had had a cheese making business, and they milked about 60 goats, and they made cheese from the milk of these goats. The whole family took part in this enterprise, but they sold fresh goat cheese and also semi-aged goat cheese. And cheese is a lot like wine, and it's a lot like bread in that there's microbial action that happens in the preparation of the substance. And so we talk about that in our family as the micro herd. You know, you've got a herd of cows or a herd of sheep or a herd of chickens or whatever, but you can have the micro herd, these microorganisms like yeast that transform substances in the natural world into something else. And so cheese is one of those because it uses lactobacillus, which is a bacteria, and also rennet, which is a substance traditionally anyway, taken from the stomach lining, the stomach tissue of another animal. And so there's a lot of, you know, almost magical things going on to make cheese. Well, this family had stopped making cheese by the time I got there. But when I got there in the late 80s, they still had about 6 or 7 or 8 goats. And so that was my job. I got to milk the goats twice a day, which meant once in the morning, and then letting them go off into the mountainous area around the farm, do their thing, you know, pooping, trampling, eating grass and herbs and flowers all over the mountainside. And then I would have to go out in the late afternoon and herd them back in and milk them again for the evening and close them up to be safe from predators at night. And so the milk that I got out of that, sometimes we would just drink it straight. We'd put it in coffee or tea. They drink a lot of tea over there. But then made it also into cheese, the way that the family had done about 5 years before I'd gotten there on a large scale. Well, another part of my job there was fixing the stone walls. Maybe you've seen pictures of these famous stone walls all over Ireland, very picturesque, lots of holes in them, but they're just stones gathered from the fields, from the middle of the fields over the centuries that have been basically piled up into organized walls. Well, in Ireland, they have special names for the different sizes of stones in those walls. And one of my favorite ones was the Figeen. And anything with "een" on the end of it, like Colleen, means smaller, a smaller thing. And so the Figeens were about the size of a human head or a little smaller, Figeens. And they would fit into little gaps here and there in the wall to shore them up and make them stable. Well, the Figeens, they looked like the cheese that the family made from the goat milk. And the marvelous thing about the cheese was that, well, the fresh cheese was very bright white, but the semi-aged cheese had sort of a off-white or sort of grayish almost color to it, and it was crumbly, and it was about the same size as the Figeen. Now, somebody in marketing would have maybe said, there's a great name for your cheese right there, the Figeen. I don't know what they called it when they had been marketing it, but it had this wonderful crumbly texture, the semi-aged cheese did, which also reminded me of kind of like dirt. If you picked up, a big semi-moist piece of dirt and kind of worked it with your fingers, it could crumble apart. And that was a lot like the texture of this wonderful goat cheese. Well, and so I remember the biblical phrase, all flesh is grass. I don't know where it is in the Bible, but it has to do with the way that animals that are ruminants, like cows and bison and even elephants and giraffes and goats and sheep, when they eat grass, they turn that into their bodies and milk. And so it seemed like, as we ate that cheese, we were sort of tasting the dirt. We were tasting the land that had produced it, because the goats had eaten the grass and the vegetation on these mountainsides and turned it into milk. Somebody's asked me if that was feta. Feta is sheep milk cheese, I believe, but very similar. Yeah, similar to feta cheese. And it's kind of like milk is like a distilled product. It's like any animal that makes milk is sort of ingesting things and then filtering it, through those glands to make the milk. It's like this concentrated, super nutritious substance. And so to wrap up, I just wanted to say that I think of this as kind of a cosmic reminiscence, because as we tasted that cheese and sort of I felt like I was tasting the farm that I was living on. I was tasting the land, and just that magical transformation that that the land and the grass went through to become the cheese struck me also as something religious. And so that's why I started to think of the cheese as transubstantiated dirt. That's my story.
Transubstantiated dirt. that should be on the ingredients list of every piece of cheese. Yeah. Thank you, Tim, very much for that story. My gosh, there's so much information on that. I was actually taking notes. Yeah, a lot to know there. So we do have someone who stepped up, who is so inspired, who's going to take the leap, who's going to tell us a story. Grant Glenn is here to tell us his story. I don't know anything about you, Grant, so you're just going to have to introduce yourself. Take it away.
Well, I'm an old timer. I used to do Story Slam, and then we got away from it for a few years. And I see a few familiar faces. We joined you last month. Donna and I decided that we were bored with the pandemic and we wanted to travel. Donna had retired in April. And so last summer, we decided that we would buy a little camper van to pull behind our SUV, and we would take a trip. So we acquired one. It took some effort to get a used one. We wanted to start on a modest size to see if we liked it, because we'd never really done that before. And we tried it out. We went to South Dakota, to the Badlands, and we went to Wichita, and we went to Arkansas. And, we figured out that we could do this. So our ultimate goal was to spend February in Florida. And so we started making reservations in October, realizing that that's a little late to be making reservations. So as a result, we went to about 10 different campsites during the month of February as we were just trying to grab different places that we could go. But we thought our theory was that by pulling a trailer, we could avoid going into convenience store bathrooms, because we figured that's where all the COVID is. And we could just pretty well hop into a Walmart, get our food, and be away from people. And that plan worked pretty well. We'd pull into a gas station, and we would take turns going and unlocking the door on the trailer and running in and doing our thing. And then we would trade, and off we'd go to the next stop. And in fact, we got the tail wagging the dog. We bought this little old used trailer, and before long we had replaced our old SUV with a new pickup, because we were really getting step into the camper. It seemed like I'd hit my head. I'm about 6'3", and I think the ceilings were about 6'2", and it was okay to sleep, but it was only an 18-foot trailer and very small. There were no chairs. There were a couple of bench seats around the dinner table. And that was the way we lived for a month. And we were all up and down the Gulf Coast. And we had a really good time. But we learned a couple of lessons. When we on our way back, I told Donna, I don't know whether we're going to camp ever again, but this is too small. So we just need to sell it and buy a bigger one if we're going to do this again. And we quickly just decided that was the plan. But we were in this small trailer. We were constantly, moving things off the bed in order to use the bed, moving things off the table in order to sit down, moving things off the counter, moving things out of the bathroom in order to use the bathroom. It was constant moving. You had to move something to do something. So that was one rule that we learned, rule of thumb: move something to do something. And the other one is that if you're into camping, whether it's a giant $300,000 RV or a little $6,000 pull behind, the one thing that's universal in all is it's all about the shit. No matter what it is, you got to hook up and clean up and go through all that stuff. And that was my job, and which I agreed to accept before I started. And you have all these mechanisms to make sure you get it all out of the storage tank and into the drain. And so at the end of the day, we like motel camping a lot better than RVing. So that's how we did our pandemic, and it was a good month to be gone.
Thank you, Grant. That was Grant's story titled All About the Shit. Actually, I think that's next month's theme, isn't it, David? The dirt may not have been the appropriate theme for tonight. I'll let our next storyteller decide that. Coming up is someone I consider to be a very good friend of mine. I've known her from Artist Inc. Advanced. We've been together meeting virtually and discussing all our artistic ambitions and inhibitions. Jackie Hedeman is a longtime lurker, first-time storyteller. She does tell tales far and wide in other formats. I know her to be a very good writer. So much so that she's actually the grant writer for Lawrence Arts Center. Is that okay for me to mention that?
That's okay.
Do you consider that fiction or
NDA after this?
do you consider that fiction or nonfiction?
Depends. I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, well, anyway, her nonfiction writing can be found in The Fugue, Electric Literature, and Autostraddle, The Offing, and elsewhere, a lot of other great places. And I do want to give you a shout out because with Molly Olgin, did I pronounce it? Olgin. She is the co-creator of the Pasithea Powder, a sci-fi audio drama podcast, which I am a follower of, and I can attest to her writing abilities. So no great expectations here, Jackie. This better be good. This is Jackie's story called 9,000 Feet.
All right. There is, I mean, shit is not a feature of this story, but there is a two-holer outhouse just off stage throughout everything I'm about to say. So this is a story about what happens beyond the end of the dirt road. So my family and I have been going to this cabin in northern Colorado every year of my life. I love it because it's a place where I can go and not be found. It is beyond cell reception. There's no electricity. Like I said, there's no plumbing. So there's a 2-seater outhouse where Ethel Merman once shat. Let's just call it what it is. And so this is the scene for a summer vacation when I was around 14 or 15, when we were up there with a group of friends and their teens who are around my age. And the nice thing about the cabin is that the concerns that you have when you're there are different from the concerns that you have at sea level. So up there, it's less, you know, am I doing my job right? Is my grant fiction? And it's more, is there a bear? Have I put on enough sunscreen? Will I fall and hit my head coming down from this hike? It's very kind of basic, like lizard brain concerns. So one evening we were, you know, as a group, we had finished our exciting hikes of the day. We had bathed in the lake. We had washed all the dirt off. We had gathered around the communal dinner table and had our dinner. And it was just a really nice feeling of togetherness. And so before we gathered together to play hearts in the evening, there was a break for washing dishes, and the other teens who were like slightly cooler and maybe had stuff to do out in the yard went outside, and the rest of us remained inside, sort of debriefing from the day. And in the silence of the dishwashing and the just, you know, enjoying the end of a fight worth fighting, we heard a blood-curdling scream from the yard. And we go outside and it's pitch black because, like I said, this is far removed from everywhere. And when there's a moon, the moon is like a searchlight, but there was no moon on this night. No stars either. It was overcast. And so we had to go back in and get flashlights. Then we came back out and we find these two teenage girls down by the gate that's at the front of the property. And we're thinking bear, right? We're thinking all the concerns that we usually have up at the cabin. So we're thinking, all right, we've got a critical mass. We're going to deal with the situation. I see a bear on the chat. Yeah, exactly. That's what we were envisioning. So we get there and it's not a bear. It is 3 stick figure dolls hanging by their necks from the front gate. And, you know, listening to this, you might be thinking, that's creepy as hell. And I don't disagree. But what's important to know about this cabin is the culture of pranks. So one of the founders of it in the 50s installed a speaker underneath the two-holer outhouse so that when particularly skittish guests would go out, he could watch them and say, you know, give them some time to get situated and then go, hey, lady, we're working down here. So when I see 3, let's call them voodoo dolls, hanging by their necks from the gate, I don't immediately think we're being cursed or we're haunted or someone wants to kill us. I think, which of these 10 people has done this thing? And I was not alone, because after we all went to bed, the next day we're up, we're on a hike, we are Hercule Poirot-ing the whole situation. Where were you? When did you last go to the outhouse? You took your dog out and no one was with you. Did you bring the dolls from Salt Lake City? Where were you? And so on and so forth. So by the time the day concludes, we have it narrowed down. We think Lori, who is our friend from Salt Lake City and is the mother of the teens, we think she pulled this off because she was the only one who was unobserved for long enough. And Lori, like the true rock star that she is, just stays completely silent about this. And we figure her silence is her guilt. So we've solved it. We've solved the mystery of the voodoo dolls. We hang the voodoo dolls by the hearth in the cabin, just like every other sort of trophy that exists in the place, and we go our separate ways for another year. 15 years pass. We're back at the cabin. I'm an adult. The teens are off doing things. They are now also adults. My parents and I are up there with a different family. They have also gone to the cabin as frequently as I have, but they weren't there the summer of the voodoo dolls. But now they're there and we're there together. And it occurs to us, here's a story we haven't told them before. When you know people a really long time, they've heard all your stories, as I'm sure you all know. So we're like jazzed to tell this story because it's great, right? So we tell them this story and they don't react with surprise. In fact, they seem like they've heard this story before. So then they tell us a story. And the story they tell us is they knew we were going up to the cabin. They built these 3 dolls. They contacted a friend of theirs who lives in Colorado. They had him drive the 3 hours to the cabin from where he lived. He followed the dirt road to the end. He parked just as we did. He walked through the dark to the cabin. He crouched down in a bush outside the cabin. He waited until we were all inside for dinner. He hung the voodoo dolls by the necks on the gate, and then he crouched back down in the bush to wait for our reaction. And when I hear that story, the first thing I think is, oh, great, because I've been going to this cabin and I've been afraid of bears, and I've been afraid of chipmunks going into my backpack, and I've been afraid of leeches in the lake, but it's kind of like the one place on earth I'm not afraid of men crouched down in the bushes watching me. So that's the first thought. But then there's another way of looking at this, and that's to think of, what was Lori thinking? Because we all thought it was Lori. Lori knew it wasn't her. She knew she hadn't hung those dolls by the neck from the gate, but she did not care. She was just embracing the magic for what it was, the cabin for what it was, the dirt in the ground, the weird shape behind the bush for what it was, and just rolling with it. And I think that's the main takeaway from this. That, and maybe survey the area with your flashlight with a little bit more attention next time a teen screams in the yard. Thank you all.
That's great. Well, it could have been scorpions, you never know. So folks, that brings us to the end of our story time. I want to thank everybody for being here and just being a part of this. I want to put in certainly a plug-in for the Lawrence Arts Center for hosting us, and Jessica and David and Elizabeth for making it all happen as well. And I also want to put a plug-in for Toastmasters for helping provide some of our storytellers tonight. I belong to the Toastmasters Club. We meet every Thursday from 12 to 1. And if you want to join us and come and practice your presentational skills, we're getting really good at doing Zoom. I tell you, we're getting really good, but it's a great way to practice some of the presentations that you'd seen here tonight as well. And also, I want to put a plug in for the Busker Festival. We're actually going to be going on in September, and we will be live, okay? Because Zooming with buskers doesn't work. We tried it. It's terrible. So without further ado, I will simply say thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything? Do I need to pass it along? All right. You're all free to go. Go out and enjoy the weather and get dirty.